Before we even break down the fights, you need to hear this. Gervonta "Tank" Davis just reacted to the Roach vs. Pitbull Cruz draw. And what he said has completely split the boxing world in half. Fans are arguing, commentators are contradicting each other, and Tank's take was so harsh, so unexpected, that you can't understand this weekend's card without hearing it first. Welcome back to the channel, your boy Fennon here. Today, we're diving into the action from the 135 and 140-pound divisions. Because Gervonta "Tank" Davis finally spoke up about this weekend's fight card. More specifically, he reacted to the Lamont Roach vs. Pitbull Cruz matchup that ended in a draw. And let's just say he didn't hold back. His comments about Roach were pretty harsh, but he also gave us a small hint about what might be next for him. So let's break it all down. The PBC put on a big card in San Antonio, headlined by Lamont Roach taking on Pitbull Cruz. The event also featured O'Shaquie Foster, Stephen Fulton Jr., and the long-awaited return of Frank Martin, who stepped into the ring against Rance's Barth. Erislandy Lara defended his middleweight title as well. Overall, it was a packed night of competitive fights and solid performances. But the main topic everyone keeps circling back to, the one dominating social media threads, YouTube comments, and barbershop debates, is the outcome of the Lamont Roach vs. Pitbull Cruz fight. It's rare that a single result splits fans this sharply. Some people were convinced Roach boxed smart, controlled the pace, and edged out more rounds. Others walked away saying Pitbull's pressure, activity, and aggression were enough to secure the win. And then you had the Showtime commentary team, who almost made it sound like Roach had put on a match. Their reactions, round by round, suggested they believed he was running away with the fight. They were talking as if this was a clear 117-111 type victory for Roach. But when the official judges' scorecards were read, the arena got quiet for a moment because the fight didn't swing to either side. Instead, it landed right in the center. A draw. And a draw, especially in a high-stakes matchup like this, is pretty much the last thing either fighter wanted. You have to understand why this outcome hit so many nerves. Both Roach and Cruz came into this fight with a lot riding on the line. For Roach, this was an opportunity to prove he belongs at the top of the division, to show he's more than just a good technician. For Pitbull Cruz, it was a chance to reinforce his reputation as one of the most dangerous pressure fighters in the sport, especially after moving up and showing his power carries. So when the bell rang to end the 12th round, both sides felt they had done enough, and that's exactly where the tension started. The fan reactions after the fight made the situation even more complicated. Online debates turned into heated arguments. Some people pointed to Roach's cleaner punches, the jabs he used to keep Cruz at bay, and the moments where he made Pitbull miss wildly. To them, those sequences showed Roach had better control and ring IQ. Others argued that Pitbull was the one dictating the fight, walking forward, throwing combinations, and forcing Roach to respond. They said, activity matters, pressure matters, and you can't win rounds just by landing a handful of clean counters. If the other guy is working the entire time, then you throw in the commentary factor. Showtime's broadcast team seemed heavily impressed with Roach's technique, and anytime he landed a clean counter, they highlighted it. But fights aren't judged based on commentary, they're judged based on what the three people sitting ringside see or think they see in real time. And those judges often see things from completely different angles than the TV cameras. That's where the real disconnect came from. The commentary created one narrative, the punch stats created another, and the judges created a third. So naturally, the result sparked confusion and frustration. When the word draw came out of the announcer's mouth, both corners looked stunned. Cruz's team shook their heads, believing Pitbull's pressure and punch output carried the fight. Roach's corner looked just as frustrated, feeling he had outboxed Cruz and landed the cleaner, more accurate shots. But a draw means neither man convinced the judges enough. It means the rounds were close, maybe too close. And that's exactly what makes this result so unsatisfying. For fans, a draw feels like watching a movie that cuts to black at the climax. No closure, no payoff, no resolution, just a cliffhanger. And that's why the reaction has been so strong. People wanted clear validation for one man or the other. Instead, they got a result that keeps everything unsettled. And from a career perspective, a draw doesn't do either fighter many favors. Roach wanted a statement win, something to push him into bigger fights and remove the doubts that follow him. Cruz wanted momentum, especially after moving up in weight, to position himself for even more significant opportunities. Now both men are stuck in a strange middle ground. Not defeated, not victorious, but suspended somewhere in between. To make things even more interesting, the draw raises deeper questions about each fighter's style. For Roach, people wonder whether he's too cautious and too dependent on counterpunching to really separate himself. He's skilled, but he often keeps things so close that he leaves decisions up to the judges, and that's dangerous. For Cruz, some fans feel his pressure is impressive but not always effective. He moves forward constantly, but forward movement alone doesn't score points if you're not clearly landing. All of this is why the boxing world won't let this topic go. It wasn't just a draw, was the kind of draw that exposes the biggest debate in the sport. What do judges really value? Clean punching, ring generalship, activity, defense, or something else entirely? No matter which side you're on, one thing is certain: this result has created more questions than answers. And judging by the way fans are dissecting every second of the fight, it's a conversation that isn't going away anytime soon. After the dust settled, Gervonta Davis finally shared his thoughts. And honestly, his take was a mix of right and wrong. I wouldn't have used the exact words he did, but Tank basically said Lamont Roach is a gatekeeper, and that what we saw on Saturday is the level he's at now. What does the word gatekeeper really mean in boxing? People throw the term around a lot, sometimes as an insult, sometimes as a compliment. But not everyone actually understands the role. In reality, a gatekeeper is a very specific, very important type of fighter in the sport. They're the person you're matched with when promoters, trainers, and the boxing world want to find out whether a rising contender is actually ready to move up to the elite level. You don't put someone in against a champion right away. You send them to the gate first. And that gate is guarded by a fighter who is tough, experienced, smart, and good enough to expose anything that's not solid. Gatekeepers aren't bums. They're not washed fighters who can't compete anymore. In fact, they're the exact opposite. A true gatekeeper is someone who can give almost anybody a hard night. They have enough skill, enough ring knowledge, and enough durability to push contenders to their limit. If a fighter isn't legit, their defense is sloppy. If they fold under pressure, if they freeze up when someone doesn't go away, they will get found out by a gatekeeper. That's why beating one is meaningful. These fighters are the unofficial testers of the division. And this role has existed forever. Look back through boxing history, and you'll find dozens of fighters who made their living being the one man you had to get through before even thinking about a title shot. They're usually the guys who have fought everyone, have seen every style, and don't get intimidated by hype. They might have losses, but almost all their losses are competitive against top names. They don't fall apart. They don't quit. They don't break mentally. You've got to beat them, really beat them, to get past them. That's what makes the gatekeeper label powerful. If you can't get by a gatekeeper, the message is simple: you're not ready. And if you do beat them, especially if you beat them convincingly, it shows the boxing world that you're the real deal. You're ready for the next level, maybe even ready for a title shot. Look at how matchmaking works behind the scenes. When a young fighter is being brought up, they start with journeyman opponents who are mainly there to give experience. But once you've moved past that stage, you don't jump straight from easy fights to world champions. Instead, you're put in against a gatekeeper. That matchup tells everyone exactly where you stand. It removes any illusions or smoke and mirrors. A lot of fighters can look good when the competition is soft, but only the ones with real talent, strong fundamentals, and mental toughness can beat someone who isn't there to be a victim. Gatekeepers are also unpredictable. They're capable of pulling off upsets. Sometimes they beat guys they weren't supposed to beat because they weren't impressed by the hype. They've been around long enough to see it all, so they don't get rattled. And if a contender underestimates them, that's usually when things go wrong. A fighter might come in thinking it's going to be an easy night, only to end up struggling, getting hurt, or even losing because the gatekeeper exposed something in their game. There's another important layer to this. Being a gatekeeper doesn't mean someone isn't good anymore. Plenty of gatekeepers are skilled enough to still compete at a high level. They just aren't considered the top of the division. They're right below that, good enough to hang with anyone, but not always good enough to beat the very best consistently. Think about guys like Gabriel Reza. He could lose a fight, then come back and knock out a young prospect the next time out. That's what a gatekeeper does. They give you the truth. They don't sugarcoat it. They don't care about your undefeated record. They test your heart and your skill. And the thing about gatekeepers is that they force fighters to grow. If a contender beats one, especially in a tough, gritty fight, it pushes them to the next stage in their career. It builds confidence. It builds respect. It builds experience. But if they fail the test, they either go back to the drawing board, or they get stuck in that middle zone for a long time, never quite breaking through. So when someone calls a boxer a gatekeeper, it shouldn't always be seen as disrespect. Sometimes it's just an honest assessment of where they are in their career. It means they're good enough to be the test for the next generation, but it also means they're not quite at the championship level anymore. At least not consistently. That's why the label matters. Because in boxing, the path to the top isn't just about talent, it's about proving yourself against the fighters whose job is to reveal the truth. And that's exactly what a gatekeeper does. They show who belongs. And who still has work to do. There are plenty of gatekeepers in boxing today. Someone like Jose Ramirez, especially after his fight with Devin Haney, fits that description. Gabriel Rosado spent years in that role, always dangerous, always competitive. Even Rances Barthelemy is there now. He's not easy to beat, and if you do, it proves you're an elite fighter. So what does that mean for Lamont Roach? Honestly, Tank might not be completely wrong. Roach is still a solid contender, but he may be moving into that stage where he becomes the test for rising fighters. He's talented, he's skilled, but it's unclear whether more championship opportunities are going to come his way. At this point, he might be the guy young contenders have to get through to prove they belong at the top. Maybe a few years from now. Lamont Roach might fall into that gatekeeper category, but saying he's there already feels a bit unfair. I still think he's a real contender. The issue with Roach isn't his skills, it's that he struggles to clearly separate himself from the guy he's fighting. Roach is mainly a puncher, and that style has its limits. When you're not taking the lead, the other fighter naturally gets more credit in the exchange, especially if anything even halfway clean lands. And yes, you can win plenty of moments with sharp counters, but you'll also lose some when the judges don't clearly see your shots. Because the opponent is starting and finishing the action. That's exactly how he approached Gervonta Davis. He never really tried to create distance on the scorecards or dominate stretches of the fight. It felt like he was focused on keeping things close, hoping for a split decision. And honestly, I think that mindset comes from him. Before the fight, he even predicted that if Gervonta didn't take over early, the fight would end in a split decision. That tells you he was planning to keep everything tight, instead of taking risks. But that approach has downsides. If you're not willing to step forward, attack, and push for a clear win, you're leaving the result to the judges every time. And when that happens, you have to really stand out to get the call. He didn't separate himself from Davis. And he didn't separate himself against Pitbull Cruz either. For the record, I thought Gervonta Davis clearly won their fight, not a blowout, especially because Roach stepped it up in round 12. But he didn't push the pace in rounds 9, 10, or 11. When Tank was landing strong work, that's where the fight slipped away. Against Pitbull Cruz, the same problem showed up again. There were moments where the commentators were praising Roach, but what I saw was Pitbull being the more active guy. The broadcast team gets caught up in punch stats, how many jabs Roach threw or how many power shots he attempted, but that's not how boxing is scored. Activity and aggression matter, not just totals on a graphic. So fans end up confused. They hear the commentators say one thing, but the judges see something completely different, and that creates frustration. In both big fights, Roach didn't do enough to clearly pull away. And when you leave it that close, you can't be shocked when the decision doesn't go your way. If Lamont Roach really wants to get out of this slump he keeps talking about, this frustration about close fights and bad breaks, then he's going to have to change something. He can't just keep boxing safely and expect different results. At some point, he needs to do what guys like David Benavidez do. Let his hands go, take over the fight, and dominate the opponent so clearly that the judges can't deny him. Being technically sharp isn't enough right now. Roach isn't a big ticket seller, he's not a fan favorite. And he's not yet at the level where people give him the benefit of the doubt on close rounds. Until he reaches that status, he has to make his wins unmistakable. But instead, he keeps fighting at a pace that leads straight to these razor-close scorecards. It almost feels like he's aiming for it, going round by round without putting real pressure on his opponent. Not trying to hurt them or separate himself, just staying close, staying careful, and hoping the judges see things his way. The problem is, the judges don't always see what the commentators or fans see, and depending on the camera angle, depending on how exchanges look in real time, those rounds can swing the other direction. That's why these decisions keep ending up as draws, or fights where Roach doesn't get the call. It's not that he isn't skilled, it's that he isn't standing out. Now, I still wouldn't call Lamont Roach a gatekeeper, not yet. That's going a bit too far, but if he continues fighting like this, A few more performances of this type, and that's exactly the category he'll fall into. Not because he isn't good, but because he keeps leaving fights to chance. And nobody is going to be eager to face someone who's tricky, talented, and always tough to look good against. Anyway, that's how I see it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And with that, I'm out. Deuces.